So in terms of basic strategies, the first one is about getting some balance in the household through routines, because typically it's the routines being interrupted that prevent the baseline of physical, mental, feeling states, family and spiritual needs from being met. I'm using spiritual in conjunction with deeper identity. And so when our physical needs aren't being met, when our mental, psychological needs aren't being met, when our feeling-based needs aren't being met, our family needs aren't being met, and our sense of who we are isn't being endorsed or underwritten or encouraged and supported isn't being met, then essentially our sense of who we are very quickly gets shut down, very quickly gets undermined and gets maintained in that state. States of exhaustion, states of hunger, states of fatigue and feeling chronically tired all the time. And of course, routines around those states that aren't supportive to change those states or in fact vary them in any way, shape or form. And so what that means is that people who come out of environments where there's serious domestic violence often have big issues with setting down routines and maintaining them, because they're simply not used to having a routine which isn't interrupted. They're used to having ritual events, as in meals, breakfasts, social occasions, etc., interrupted by the use of violence. And so base one strategy is to take out a bit of paper and draw a big circle on a piece of paper, and on it put a cross, so cut it down on one side with your pen or your marker, and then cross it again through the middle, so you've got a big cross over the circle, and it's looking a little bit like a target. And at the top of it, I want you to put needs right across the top of it. Where you're not able to read and write, you can do the same exercise using pictures to represent these different areas. And so in the physical needs, you might put a picture of a physical body and glue or sellotape it in there, stick it in there. In the mental needs, a picture of a head. The feeling-based needs, picture of a heart. And in terms of the family-based needs, just a little picture of a group of people. The spiritual / identity-based needs, you might want to put a picture of the sunshine or a picture of the sun in terms of being life-giving. And so the objective of this little wheel is firstly to identify what your mind needs are, and then to get them operating and functioning in balance, that we're doing them in a routinized way, and as such supporting not only day-to-day needs but of course well-being within that. And so along the physical line, of course, real basics, so food, and that might be 2 to 3 times a day. Water, of course, to make sure that you're getting hydrated properly. It's a big deal for children who get enuresis, bedwetting, from situations of domestic violence being done, where they can't use the toilet, sometimes because they're traumatised, other times because they sleep too deeply and unable to wake up to go to the toilet, or they can't get access due to either parties in the house, or they're too afraid to get out of the bedroom thinking that they might get attacked by the perpetrator in the house, something of that nature. And so being trauma-related, bedwetting is a big issue. So is hydration. Getting up to go to the bathroom, getting up to go to the kitchen, getting up to go and get a glass of water from somewhere in the house. So remember to put water on the sheet there. The other one, of course, is sleep. Sleep's really important for people who have had protracted or long periods of domestic violence, because it's often the sleep routine that gets interrupted through violence being acted out late at night. And so where this is acted out on the children's bedtime, then of course they don't get to go to bed. When it's acted out once the children are in bed, they get woken up by the bashing, the yells, the screams, the loud voices, and of course any emergency services that arrive soon afterwards, where they arrive at all. And so sleep routines are one big issue for little people who grow up in households with domestic violence, and getting enough sleep. And that might be down to an alarm clock, it might be down to forcing yourself to go to bed at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, whatever the time is that you nominate, and making sure that you get into bed, that you don't have a television or something in your room that's going to overstimulate your brain. I'm fully aware of working in prison for a long time that often cells have a television in them. And of course, people who are lying on their bed for long periods of time, when the bed isn't associated with sleep, it's associated with entertainment, don't go to sleep well. Secondly, a television, of course, a bit like a computer, images are full of pixels. And of course, where people don't turn the television off at night time, then they're going to download literally the little files in their mind. They're going to have to be worked through and processed, and typically that's done once they go to sleep. And so they're not getting restful sleep. They're not getting rest at all. They're simply closing their eyes. They're going to sleep. They'll wake up so many hours later, exhausted in the morning, and then probably turn the television on to listen to music or a radio type feature, and again watch it some more. And so that's putting in place a routinized sense of chronic fatigue, chronic tiredness, and not enough sleep. So sleep's a really important one. The other feature, of course, in that physical area is some exercise. And what that might include some gentle walking, remembering, of course, that where you and I go running, then it's 2.5 times our body weight being slammed down on our ankles and feet every pacing step that we take during the running. So walking is a really good form of exercise in that sense, and both in terms of cardio for lungs and in terms, of course, of being low impact for the body. Of course, swimming pools are also excellent because they provide a weightless environment. And so put down some exercise on there in terms of the physical needs. The other feature that is really helpful there is some basic self-care features, and that might be making sure that you keep your body clean. Many people in situations of domestic violence get their body shamed, sometimes through the domestic violence directly, others sometimes also, unfortunately, through other forms of abuse, including sexual abuse. And so the body's shamed, and people neglect their body because it's not a source of comfort or a source of acceptance. It's a source of shame. It's a source of pain, of hurt. And so it's really important to make sure that you keep yourself clean, obviously, and that you're taking whatever care you need to wear clean clothes as well, because you and I disregard or ignore the physical needs of the body in feeling clean, that can affect not only how you feel within yourself, but also too the social implication of being around people where you're dirty, where you're smelling, etc. And it's not so much in the sense of being seen to be in the fashion sense of it. It's more in the sense of, particularly for little people, not being excluded from another dimension outside of home, which is further going to isolate them after violence. So those are some of the basic physical needs. You can include weights in there, obviously, all different forms of sports, tennis, swimming, rowing, whatever you can get access to, essentially, in terms of your means. The second area is in terms of the mental needs, and within that, for many adults, partners left behind, that's the ability to get some form of mental stimulation. Providing you can read and write, that might be reading a book, it might be having time to sit on the couch and catch up reading a book or a magazine or something you haven't done for a long time. It may be a sense of being able to do some research or some family research, to go down to the library and get a library card and join in that. It might be scrapbooking, where you go and meet with a group of people, the new people get introduced to, and decide to do something of a more arts and craft type nature, so you can start re-stimulating a sense of imagination and creativity. Where you don't read and write, mental stimulation may be the sense of getting out amongst other people and socialising and being able to listen to other people's stories and to tell your own story. And the mental stimulation part comes about in the sense of hearing new ideas, in the sense of being able to hear your own story, and in the sense of being able to choose what it is that you talk about and relate about to, over and with other people. Because for so long you may have been controlled in terms of what you were able to pursue and follow, what you were able to share, and often you might not have been listened to at all. And so part of the mental stimulation in that sense is the ability to be able to converse, to be able to think through issues that you haven't been able to ponder or reflect on for a long time, and get some personal space that's set up and encouraging towards you doing that. The third area in terms of family systems or family is one of being able to be together. And sometimes this is something that becomes really challenging because the being together has been marred by the impacts of the domestic violence. And so it's something you've got to sometimes learn to do or redo. and to really work at in order to get a sense of comfort around it and a sense of competence around it, particularly where your children may have been taken away by the state, particularly where children might have gone to visit other family members or in fact had informal agreements with families whereby they stay with other family members for months on end because it hasn't been safe for children to be at home. And so family type needs are ones of being together, of being able to open up new conversation, of being able to communicate openly and honestly with each other and say things the way they are, and being able to develop some rules together in the house. Who comes over, how they come over, what the precondition for that is, putting shoes out before coming inside, making sure the elements are turned off after cooking, whatever those family things happen to be. Spending some time together, perhaps on the days after school a week, and certainly on the weekends, and prioritising that as time together. It doesn't cost anything to walk down to the park. It doesn't cost anything to go down, providing you've got a river or a beach nearby, and to spend some time taking a little bit of food, having a picnic together, doing something away from your normal physical environment, particularly where it's a new physical environment, and you're familiarising yourself with a new local area that you may have moved to. And so family features within that really important. The fourth feature in terms of the feelings-based issues is to do with being able to share how you feel with each other. It's difficult having a sense of loving each other and not being able to develop a language that expresses that. Often, that can be conveyed in a hug. It can be conveyed in a rub on the back. It can be conveyed putting your or my arm around another family member. However, what's really, really important in terms of feelings is being able to talk about feelings openly with each other and identify what your feelings are, and in that, having a sense of being able to share them and develop that new language in the house that has been absent for so long. And remembering too that swear words, cussing and cursing in some places, are not feelings-based words. They describe other things, but what they don't access are the access cues into what feelings mean, remembering that feelings are there to record our experience. And so it's really important that when you feel angry, that it's stated as I feel angry. When you feel sad, I feel sad. When you feel frustrated, I feel frustrated. Where it's disappointment, I feel disappointment. That mum or dad or mum and mum hasn't come back to see us. I feel really gutted that we've been put in this home together and no one seems to have showed up to visit, whatever it happens to be. However, try and use the correct words in relation to the feeling statement that you're going to be trying to express. So with feelings, it's really important to identify what it is you're feeling in the here and now, that you challenge yourself to name your feelings and express them as often as you can, so that there's not a sense of continuing to deny how you're feeling, continuing to deny sharing those feelings with other people that you love and care for, and continuing to deny developing connections and emotional feeling-based connections with other family members over time. And so feelings is the next part of that. And of course spiritually, and spiritually is about deeper sense of identity. For some, that's about identifying with some form of foundational beliefs and connections to do with why they're here at all in terms of existence. For others, it's about having an affinity with the natural world and those factors that surround them. For others still, it's about the connection with ancestors and the roles their ancestors played, the archetypes or original formats in terms of examples that those ancestors gave. Classic ones within Indigenous cultures are warriors, healers, etc. And of course, within that sense of what spiritual needs are, being able to own who you are, being able to express who you are, and being able to explore deeper as to who you are and reclaim dimensions of that identity within your day-to-day life and living. And so those are some holistic needs that make you or I up as a whole person. Feelings, the issue of mental needs, the issue of family needs, the issue of physical needs, and in the middle of all that, the issue of spiritual needs. You might have remembered from before pictures that can depict or show those same needs. A physical body, a person standing there for the physical needs, a head for the mental needs, In terms of the feeling-based needs, water. Many cultures, water records memories from different phases throughout the natural world and throughout experiences within life itself. And of course, in terms of the family needs, a group of people, and for the spiritual needs, the sunshine, showing life, showing light, showing a sense of warmth, showing a sense of energy. And so that's just a way to identify, in the first instance, reclaiming as a strategy a sense of what my basic needs are, and of course within that, how to go about meeting them day to day in a routinized way. The routinized way is really important because it's about meeting those needs in an ongoing way where the well-being is underpinned through that consistency, so that chronic fatigue disappears over time, so that the sleeplessness disappears over time, and you're able to sleep and rest better and your body repair better, so that mentally there's a sense of better mental health to increase or uplift low mood, particularly in terms of adult company as well, for those of you who've been isolated from being able to have friends and share your social and personal company with other people. In terms of the feelings-based states, that sense of being able to express how it is that you're feeling, what you're feeling, to whom you want and when you want, and being able to do that in a way where you develop some trust around your own feeling states and hearing and sharing back from other people how they're feeling and getting used to that. Because as we know, one of the key factors that unfortunately gets compromised very quickly in domestic violence is empathy, respect, the ability for you and I to not only place ourselves in other people's shoes, but to have what you and I are experiencing considered by the other party as well. And so empathy is a big issue that is quickly negated or ignored in relation to family violence. And so part the reason for doing each of these things that you and I have recorded or written down, whether it be in writing words or using symbols, pictures, etc., is the ability to underpin well-being, the ability to get our health back, the ability to maintain a routine. And routine is really important. It's important so our body knows where it stands with itself. It's important so that our mind knows where it stands with itself. It's important so that our feelings know where they stand within ourselves. It's important so we know where we stand within our family system and can start to reclaim and redevelop trust outside of the fear that was experienced or shame that was experienced previously that was getting in the way of those attachments being maintained. And of course, the other feature is making sure that each of our identities is being maintained, encouraged, supported and extended so that we can manifest or put into place all our potentials that we've got, which have been, again, dampened or compromised by living in an environment which was a violent environment. And so what the routines and all those things do over time also is they help establish an environment which is predictable. They help to establish an environment where things that you and I are going to do during the day can be anticipated. And in that, safe, and in that safety and anticipation in that predictable environment, a sense of calm being established over time, because there's a knowing that these things aren't going to be interrupted, they're not going to be destroyed, they're not going to be not done at all, and they're going to be able to be continued as a day-to-day work ethic and a day-to-day routine. Once you and I have got that circle there and the needs have been defined on it, the next thing to draw is a line, just a line on a piece of paper. Across the paper, halfway up, and on it, draw two stick figures. And the two stick figures are on an even line. And I want you to put an upside down V underneath it so it looks like a little seesaw. And what's important within that is developing a sense of equal relationships, so that in terms of how you and I treat each other and other family members in the house, that we're going to treat each other equally from here on in. There isn't going to be a sense of basket passing where I'm holding your basket, you're holding my basket, look after each other's baskets, meaning our full experiences. And we embrace those and encourage each other to embrace our own, so that our experiences aren't being undermined, they're not being battered, they're not being ignored, and that they're supported to be expressed. And so on the two sides of that line, I want you to put two little stick figures carrying little miniature baskets. And in there, of course, is total experience. So whether one of those parties is male, the other might be female, what factors go along with those two people in terms of the treasures and the potentials that they bring within them. And of course, from that, a sense of how to maintain balance through respect, how to maintain balance through actively listening to each other, how to maintain balance through waiting for people to finish saying what they're saying in a conversation, how to maintain balance by having a sense of being able to ask each other how you and I can support each other during the day and what's required to do that. From there, from the line, I want you to put a third point up about 6 inches up the page, where a little point, so it becomes a triangle. And on that triangle, I want you to write the word issue, ISSUE, so that in time you're defining between you what issues are. So rather than focusing on each other, you're focusing on defining what issues are for you in your day-to-day life and in the household. So we're going to move away from a model of it's your fault, get stuffed, you're carrying my basket and yours, or let's both put our baskets down on the ground and own nothing, to let's focus on what the issues are for you and me and how those issues might be perceived differently because you're female, I'm male. You're 15 and I'm 17 or 18 or 19 or it might be 10, different age. Your needs are defined differently than what my needs are. You've got natural needs, which I don't have. You've also got social experiences, which I don't have. And so we're going to be able to define what other issues are going on in the house from those different perspectives, including age, culture, and a whole range of other factors. And those features are going to define how you and I define what those issues are going on for us. And to be able to encourage us to ask that question in any conversation, what's the issue here? So rather than having a sense of feeling bad and then wanting to expel the feelings, to actually be able to identify what it is you and I are thinking, what it is you and I are feeling, and work through that each step at a time. So the issue for me is, etc. And what that means is that we've actually got to stop and think. In a situation as expressed previously with domestic violence, there's no time to think, there's no time to stop and think and work things through. The luxury of doing that isn't there because it's too chaotic. And so it's important to stop and have a sense of being able to consider what's going on. And for people who've been around and in domestic violence for a long time, that's a new scary thought, a new scary factor, because they haven't had to do that before. They haven't had the opportunity to do that before, let alone have a sense of even knowing how to do it. So put the handbrake on and have a sense of what's going on here, what's the issue for me here. The issue for me is it's your turn to do the dishes. The issue for me is that I felt really afraid when you brought those people to the house and one of them looked like the old man. The issue for me is etc. And so in terms of that positive triangle, we're going to be focusing on issues. I want you also to be able to put another triangle down 6 inches down the other side of the page in the downwards direction of the page, and put a third party there. And the third party is there to demonstrate, as is in the shape of it, triangulation. So that we've got a circle, we've got a line, we've got a triangle. The first triangle is focusing on what the issues are as opposed to problems and defining what those issues are and then being able to share them. The second one, which creates, in fact, a diamond shape, is to represent third parties. And that third party triangulation, as it's called, or splitting, is to remind oneself to speak to the other party who you're speaking to not speak through other people in order to get access to another party. So rather than John speaking to Ashley through Brooke, John's going to speak to Ashley directly. And so the third party in that middle sense is to remind us not to triangulate. So to have the respect to say what we need to say to the person to whom it needs to be said to. When there's other features in the house, particularly in relation to sexual abuse and deviance, often that person on the third party on that point of the triangle will speak to the other two parties who are on the flat line and say one thing about another party and another thing about the other party, and so set them up against each other constantly so they can gain access to children. And so it's really important with triangulation that you hear what it is that you need to hear in that old colloquial term straight from the horse's mouth, that you get it directly from the other party, that when you want to convey a message, you give it to the other party directly yourself, so that you get used to doing that, and so that you don't reinforce the old family roles that were going on in amongst the domestic violence, where you weren't able to communicate directly with other parties, let alone effectively. And so it's really important to gain the confidence to be able to put words to what you're experiencing yourself, that you're able to lay that down and say those things in a way that's respectful and appropriate, and that you're able to do that in a way that's non-violent, where you're not forcing your will on someone else in the house. You're actually able to engage them in conversation and say, hey, these are the issues for me. How do you feel about these things? And get a response. And from there, work to a point of compromise where there's some give and take and some sharing, so that you get an outcome that meets both parties' needs rather than only one party's needs at a time. And so what you and I have left up with in terms of those basic needs being identified is a circle, a line, a triangle, and a diamond. Where you and I want to go a step further than that, then we can take a line, draw it down a page, a straight line looking like a pole, and midway down the pole, draw a circle around it like a compass point. And it's a compass point as in a directional compass and how it works with electromagnetic energy. And in that sense, you and I are the compass point. Our backbone is the straight line. The round part is in the centre of the solar plexus. And if you were to think of it like a disc or a plate, the goal is to keep that flat at all times. So that we've got the pole standing upright and around it equidistant, that round plate shape. And so on a bit of paper, it might simply look like one pole going one way and a flat disc halfway down it. So that it was drawn in 2 dimensions, you'd just see a vertical line going upwards and a horizontal line going across. It's meant to represent a disc. So if we were to see it in 3 dimensions or 3D, it'll look like a skewer going through a plate, and the plate's being balanced on that skewer in the middle of it. So that in the same way that you and I are being balanced in the sense of the seesaw, that we're making sure that we're not using those statements of I'm okay, you're not okay, or I'm not okay, you're okay, or a sense of you're okay, I'm not okay. It's a statement of you're okay and I'm okay. We're in an equal place and want to treat each other with dignity and respect. And so the compass point is one of maintaining balance and remembering to maintain balance. And it's related to that circle that you and I have drawn in relation to needs regarding physical, mental, feelings-based and family needs. And of course in the centre, the sense of identity and spiritual needs being held in balance, being done in a consistent way, day after day. And a big challenge in that, where you and I have been used to a lot of ups and downs in the house, is one of, particularly for young people, not having a sense of that routine being boring, because we've been used to a lot of action in the house, a lot of arousal in the house, going up and down, being upset, being sad, being this, being that, from one extreme to the other. Then it can be quite a discipline in terms of setting a new routine and keeping it. So try to go easy on yourself. It might take you a little while to actually define what that new routine is, define what those new needs are, and go about meeting them on a day-to-day basis. You might find that every now and again you skip breakfast, or you skip lunch, or you skip tea, because you're simply not used to doing them in a consistent one step after the other type way. But once you work on it for a while, what you will find is it gets easier and easier, and you actually start to feel a lot better in your day when you've had a decent sleep, when you're keeping your water up, when you're going for a bit of a walk. And the walk isn't simply about exercising and health to look good and all that buzz. The walk's about getting your physiology, getting your biochemistry and all the interactions that occur in your body moving. And beyond that, we typically learn to move before we do anything else. And so what walking helps do is it helps to move the brain, the mind, the thought process. And so it's really good to go for a gentle walk for that reason. Because when there's things that you and I have buried within ourselves that are deep down within the water of our memories, then what the movement helps to do is it helps to bring those things gently up to the surface. It helps to move the thought process where you and I get stuck in our own thoughts. It helps to move that through. And it also helps to alleviate what's called an impasse, when you and I get stuck with other people And so often a gentle walk and talking with people while you are doing that can be really, really liberating, can be really freeing, because not only is the thought process being moved, the issues that need to be shared and discussed are being moved at the same time. And so that process supports itself, and each process supports each other in that sense. And so the routines may take a little while to change, and that's to be anticipated. They took a long time to get there. It took a long time to learn how to ignore your sleep. It took a long time to ignore feeling hungry and go without food for long periods of time. It took a long time to ignore hydrating your system and putting more water in it, instead developing a habit of drinking coffee or fizzy drink or cups of tea or whatever else, all that take water out of the body. And so it's going to take time to put these things in place. Guarantee you will feel the difference. There's no sense that these factors and new things will be developed overnight. It just doesn't work that way. It's going to take some time, some mindfulness, a sense of really concentrating on this territory and doing one thing at a time. Because essentially, for some people in the house, they might be relearning these things. For some of you, you may be learning these things for the first time. And so it pays to monitor what you're doing. And again, were you able to read and write? Write down the time you went to bed for a little while. Write down the time you got up in the morning. Were you not able to read and write? Have a sense of a picture with the sun coming up and the sun going down. Roughly when that comes up, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. When it goes down, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. And so that gives you a rough idea of when the sun's waking up, we're waking up. When the sun's going down, we're preparing to go to sleep. And then, of course, the moon's born, and it brings different energies and influences with it. And then it dies symbolically before the sun's born again in the morning. And so taking those natural cycles as an indicator, as a natural clock, for then developing routines around those. And so where you need to use pictures, great, do that. And then try and get different pictures to show what it is that you're doing day by day by day and how things are changing day by day by day. Make a scrapbook where you can get access to one, or simply cut the pictures out and put them in a book or an envelope, or put them in 4 separate piles just to show how each area is going. And so as you go through, what's going to occur over time is a sense of balance that's going to occur, not only on the seesaw in terms of each other and treating each other with respect and treating each other with dignity as human beings, also a sense of being able to restore order within your lives and within the household. On that, for those people perpetrators who aren't removed and taken to prison or taken away to do some form of community-based sentence, where they are prevented from recontacting or re-entering the premises for some time. It's really important, particularly for little ones, to maintain a sense of connection to them and with them. And so providing that they're not stalking or making abusive phone calls or continuing to have not owned their portion, it's really, really important to let little people in the house know that mummy or daddy are okay, that they are being looked after, that they are being cared for, that what they did wasn't okay, but that we still love them, and that we're going to do our best in future time to have a sense of trying to recontact them and make up again. Maybe not to live together necessarily, but certainly to make sure that they're okay and to make sure that there's some arrangements put in place where there can be ongoing communication and contact. And so it's important for little people in the house to know that. It's important for youths in the house to know that, so that the sense of their biggest fear of being rejected or abandoned, they're not being asked to act out the same against someone else who they love and care for, and who they need to work out that catch-22 of loving the person who hurt them and being hurt by someone they love. And they don't need the ongoing guilt of not balancing out those two features and having a sense that they didn't give the opportunity to one or both of their parents to sort things out, because later on the fear in them will be that they're not going to be given the opportunity to reconcile and sort things through either. So I hope this section in relation to basic needs has been beneficial. My encouragement to you is that you identify what these things are, and that you put them in place step by step over time. Monitor those, so go over them day to day and evaluate and assess them accordingly.